Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 245. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the acclaimed and celebrated comic book writer and owner of OG Comics, Nick Helms.
Hey everybody, it's good to be here. It's good to be here,
Hey,
Barney. Thanks for
Nick.
having me, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're just coming off of a successful Kickstarter
Mhm.
that just came out. I believe it was like last month, correct?
It was really successful. We doubled our budget, so um,
Yeah, that's right. Because you just came in, like I said, it was that you just funded, as you say, Vengeance Emergence issues 1 and 2,
mhm,
and your goal was to try to get 1,500, but you reached 3,000.
mhm.
And as of this recording, we were just talking before we went live that they are at the printers right now.
So I'm excited. I'm excited. It's always a cool moment when you send it off to the printer because it's just such a big deal.
Talk to people a little bit about how the origin story of Vengeance is. This originally was written as a screenplay, correct?
Yes, yes. I originally wrote it as a screenplay back in like 2007.
Wow.
So I wrote it as a screenplay. Was going to do the film myself, and I casted all the roles and everything, and something just didn't feel right about it, and just things weren't adding up to me, and I didn't want to, you know, half do it because I was so enamored with the story that I had come up with, and so I decided not to do it at that time. And then, but I kept writing and I wrote a sequel and then I wrote another sequel. So then I had three movie scripts and I was like, okay, what do I do now? And then I was like, you know what? And then I just kept coming up with ideas in my head and coming up with a mythology, this mythology of this vengeance character and all these characters that I had come up with. And so then I was like, okay, so don't have all this extra material. I could do this as a TV show. So then I started writing it as a TV show. Started writing teleplays as
Hmm.
TV scripts are called. So I started writing teleplays, and so then and I had like 6 or 7 of those, but then I had like a whole I had enough, so I started coming up, start writing it down. Eventually, Barney, I got to a spot where I had so many synopsises and so many like drawing all these like a map with all these characters and little red lines of this character goes here and this character goes here and eventually they're going to be here and all these things that I could have done about 70 episodes of a TV show that I had because I have a binder full of stuff over there. And so then I was like, hey, let's do this TV show. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it myself. I'm gonna put it on as a web series on YouTube. This was like 2010, 2011, whenever by this happened. And I was like, YouTube was really, really popping then. And so I was like, all right, let's do this. And but then I was like, nope, no, let's not do it. So I set it aside, and until a couple years ago when I decided, you know what? I could do this as a comic. And I was
Hmm.
like, why have I not done it as a comic? This makes sense. It's a superhero. You should have just done it as a comic. Comics are my favorite medium. Why did I not think about this all the time? What? This is dumb. You've been sitting on this idea for so long and you could have it's just sitting there. I was just like, oh, I could just do this as a comic. So Rhoda started writing scripts, comic scripts, and here we are now. And so that was the way it went.
So, how different is it to write a screenplay as compared to a comic script? How are those differences?
So the difference is, in the movie script, you're writing with the actions and all the dialogue and stuff like that, and you're kind of doing the same thing with the comic, but then you got to think of it as in pages and panels. So it's
Hmm.
just basically taking the vision that I have, and this instead of saying what is happening, telling in a script of this is description, it's basically breaking down your like in a film reel, how they used to shoot on film and stuff like that before, most people do digital now. It's all this is cut, right? Cutting all these
Hmm.
scenes and cutting all these little scenes. So basically, those little frames of a film reel is a film strip is just like taking those and making those into panels of a comic. So I just basically did that in my head since I already had it and the envision of everything in my head. And I just put that in the panels on the page of a comic book. and I was like, 22 pages. So, and that's basically what I did.
And so, talk to us a little bit about what the story is for Vengeance.
Yeah. So without trying to not spoil anything, Vengeance, or as it's sometimes referred to as Vengeance Emergence, is about a college baseball player slash investigative journalist named Nick Burrow. And yes, I did name the main character Nick. Okay, it was my first thing I created whenever I was like 19 years old. So I just went all the people's names and the characters were people that I knew, and I made the main character myself. But the thing was, at the time I was going to school for I played baseball in high school, and I was going to school for journalism. So I mean, it kind of went with kind of went with the theme. So um, write what you know, not what you don't know. so and so Anyway, the college baseball player, investigative journalist, he lives in the town of Metron. The Metron's really bad. Think Gotham, Barney.
Mm.
But it's ran basically by this one gang, the Nightmare
The
Gang.
Nightmare Gang.
Yes, the Nightmare Gang. Uh,
Right.
and and so he writes this article about the Nightmare Gang, some of the members, because he sees like a shady deal going down. Writes an article about it, gets some, throw them in jail. Well, guess what? The Nightmare Gang's ran by this really bad guy, and he wasn't really happy about losing some people. So he said, "Look, there's this kid. Let's kill him."
Mm.
So he sends some people after him, kills him. Oh no, the main character dies, right? Well, fortunately for Nick, he's friends with Deshaun Hines, who is a scientist in Metron, and he was working on cybernetic enhancements, just coincidentally like that. And so Deshaun uses these cybernetic enhancements to bring Nick back to life, and he comes back as a cybernetic man, half robot, and he decides to use well, because his world is now completely gone.
Mm.
Now I mean, you can't play baseball, can't be investigative journalist when you look like that, right? So what else better thing to do than go fight crime and try to stop the Nightmare Gang because he wants to help turn Metron into the once bright and shining city that it used to be. And the way to do that is take out the Nightmare Gang, which he needs to get vengeance on because they killed him.
Right.
And so that's his
Right.
name, Vengeance.
And so you mentioned before too that you did a lot of world building on this.
hmm
What are some of the other superheroes that are in your world?
So the world building that I have is a lot of the characters that you meet in throughout the issues that we're gonna do,
Okay.
and I have other heroes that I had thought about that I just they but by the time they would be not introduced for a long time. So this is really just
Okay.
the origin story of Vengeance of where we are right now, and then God willing, that we just keep on going, that we'll start introducing other heroes. But there is other heroes that I'm wanting to work on, and other heroes with my team of people that we've had added to Original Geek Comics that are wanting to do some heroes too. That are hoping so that we're trying to build our own universe, the OG comics or Original Geek Comics, and have our own universe of characters. So.
Mm. And so how expansive is this universe that you're working on that you've created?
Well, right now it's small.
Right.
Vengeance is number one, and then number two is about to come out. So we just started,
Mm.
but I'm hoping to keep going and getting more and expanding it more. We have another book that we're about to be announcing as of this recording. It's technically the first time that I'll be talking about it, really. But we're going to be launching a Kickstarter here in March coming up for the next book, and then that we have in the Original Geek verse. And then I'm hoping I'm in talks with we just added another artist and talking to him about a project that I had announced last year and had a girl going to do the art on, but she was just too busy and dropped out of the project. But it was the next hero. So technically, I could talk about this. Anubis was the next hero that was going to be in our universe, which is a character of my own.
Okay. And so as you mentioned in the universe, so they're in the OG what the OG verse. So
Hmm.
they could conceivably meet with Vengeance then, Anubis.
Yes, that's the plan. That's
Okay.
the plans. That's the plans. I have a couple of things that I'm working on, and so eventually they will all meet together. And the story that I'm kind of building towards is called Synergy, and that is kind of the event that we will have eventually.
Well, when it comes down to it, so are you with your other characters, did you have to also flush out other places? Because right now you're talking about Vengeance is more of like like a street level hero, correct?
Yes.
And are you looking at also when you make your world building exercises on this? Are you looking at the other kind of comic book genres like magic and space and things like that as well?
Yeah. So we're definitely doing that. The character that we're going to announce is actually space related.
Oh,
It's in the
cool.
cosmic side of that. So the next book we have is a cosmic book coming out, and so we are looking at other genres in the settings and stuff like that. And I've gone so much world building for the OG verse that I actually very by the way, I can't draw stick figures well, much less anything else. So kudos to anyone else that can draw, to anyone that can draw, because I can just write and come up with stuff. But I have a very crude drawing of a map of what the world is, like our
Uh-huh.
world, and where these towns are, and like I will draw them and draw like how big the square footage is compared to other ones. And then I have a bunch of city names and everything, and who lives there, who's operating out of there, what what will happen in there, or is it just a town that could get mentioned if there's nobody actually there, But yeah, I have a very crudely drawn map that I keep in
No,
in a secure folder.
and so is your world kind of like say like the Marvel world where it's actually kind of like Earth with like Earth cities like New York and Chicago, or is it like DC universe where it's invented names uh like Gotham and Metropolis?
It's more like DC.
Okay,
I'm honestly more of a, even though you see all these Venom and Spider-Man stuff behind me here, I'm more of a
right.
DC guy. Throughout the years, I've always been a DC guy. Like I'm a huge Batman. Batman's my jam, but I'm also
Right.
Spider-Man too, and Venom. But DC's kind of like where I draw a lot of inspiration from, and so that is why all my cities uh, are all fictional names.
So the question, Nick, is how did you find your artists?
Okay, so the for artist, whenever I first started Vengeance, so issue one and issue two have actually two different artists, as far as pencils go. The first artist that I had found for issue one, his name is Nate Niles. He's from the Chicago area in Illinois,
Mm,
and he did the pencils for issue one. That took about 2 years to get those issue one pencils, and it was a hassle to get them.
mm,
And so, and some stuff didn't match up right, and it was just it's a long story that really don't want to
mm.
get into, um, because it was supposed to be a lot more than that. And so, so that anyway, that's what happened with that. So after I got the pencils, I kind of sat on the comic for about 6 months trying to figure out, am I supposed to ink this myself? Am I supposed to color this myself? I'm not an artist. I don't know what to do. So eventually at the comic book shop that I go to, I went in there one day and the owners, I used to do freelance marketing for them, and I would do a video every week, a live video for New Comic Book Day.
Mm,
And they said, "Hey, so we met a guy that's an artist that wanted to get your information, and we gave your information." And that's when I met Jake Jackson, and he's from North Little Rock, which we're about 45 minutes from each other. Um,
mm,
but so I got with him, and we quickly hit it off, and he came on. We created Original Geek Comics because I didn't even have a name at that time. And he inked the first book, and he said, "I'm inking everything else going forward, and I'll do the pencils going forward, and everything is we're just doing this together." Two Arkansas boys just trying to get their stuff done because he has been an artist for 40 something year and wanted to do comic books. um,
Okay.
so we did that, and he inked the first one, and he did the pencils and the inks on the second book. Yeah, and it didn't take 2 years to get those. So but yeah, so that's how I found the artist, and so really, that's I kind of lucked into that, into finding Jake. We kind of just found each other. So I think a good place to go to is your local comic book shop, and just if you're wanting to make comics, make it known to your local comic book shop, because guess what? Your local comic book shop they talk to other people, and people mention things to their local comic book shop. It's kind of like talking to a bartender. You
Mm.
basically tell them everything. They know about your whole life, and so if they know that you're a writer or whatever, and that you want to make comics, eventually they may already know a person that's an artist, and just making those connections with those people,
Right.
and finding that. And that's really, um, just to get more into it, that's actually how we found Cameron uh, Aislinn, who's now my colorist. He we were doing events for when our Kickstarter back in October, November, when we were doing Kickstarter issue two,
Mm.
and we were doing events at a couple comic book shops, and we did an event at one of the comic book shop, and he came in, and he was just there's an arcade down the street from this comic book shop, and so he was meeting some friends there. They were late, so he decided to go into the comic book shop. We were there, and he just started talking to us, and he's a video game programmer, but he used to be an artist and used to draw and wanted to do comics always, but never got into it, and it never worked out for him. And he said, and he thought it was really cool, so he bought a comic and he took it home with him, and then got my information and stuff. And then later that afternoon, he said, "Can I send you something?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "Well, this is my interpretation of vengeance," and so. He sent me his interpretation of vengeance, but he sent it to me in pencils, and then Jake did it in inks, and then Jake colored it, and it's the main color cover that we're using for issue number 2. And so I asked him if he wanted to do more work with us and if he wanted to join our team, and so he did. And he ended up we only the Vengeance was originally just going to be black and white comic, um, but then I asked we we've noticed that there is like a kind of a portion of people by going to cons and stuff that aren't into black and white art in like
Right.
color. So I was like, we always wanted to color, and I said, "Hey Cameron, could you color?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, so can I pay you to color issue 1 and issue 2 if we hit like certain amounts on the Kickstarter?" And he was like, "Sure." So I made them stretch goals on issue 2, and we ended
Nice.
up hitting those and then even doing more. So we talked about the Kickstarter earlier. But I think it was like 22 and 25 or 22,000 we would to get color issue 1, and then 2,500 would be issue 2 colored. So we ended up getting that more. So, or something like that. I don't really remember the numbers, but we hit where we got color issue 1 and color issue 2. So now we have black and
Okay.
white versions and color versions. And now Cameron's going to be putting out a book through us as well.
And I think you mentioned in a previous interview too that it still cost you a lot of money to
Yes.
pay to get that colored. So
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, it did cost money. And it also cost I do pay Jake. Jake gets paid for pencils and inks. So the Kickstarter really did pay for the coloring. And then it actually we have shirts and stuff with all our rewards.
Mm.
And so the money really went to shirts and stuff. And I did pay Jake a little bit, but a lot of it does still come out of my pocket.
Now, so what's happening now with as you mentioned earlier, you got Anubis, you got what are some of the other characters that are going to be introduced within the OG universe?
Some couple of things I've been working on besides Anubis, that hopefully that comes out, and hopefully in talks with the artist to do that. Um, we're about to announce Paladin. Paladin is a book. It's Cameron's book, and that is more of a cosmic book. It's
Okay.
about a hero, but it's in space. Um, and so the planet's not even close to, it's not like near Earth and stuff. So it's kind of like a, you know, how the Guardians of the Galaxy are like often places like
Right.
nowhere and stuff like that, places that are way far away from Earth. That's kind of where the setting is for Paladin, like way off from Earth. Um, but eventually he's gonna, we may see him in future things that we do. But um, Paladin's a real cool story. It's like a space knight story. Um, and I really don't want to talk too much about Paladin though, because I don't want to, because it's kind of really just talking about before we haven't even really officially announced it, Barney. So really, you're getting
See,
breaking
this is
news.
like look at this, it's breaking
Breaking news.
news.
It's breaking
Yeah.
news, man. And so I got the cover, and I'm going to be releasing that on Friday. So today's Tuesday. So Friday, and then we're at the setting up because I'm just waiting on a couple of details. Literally, we just set this up this week. As far as the Kickstarter going to go live on the 15th, March 15th. So be ready for those things. Next other project that we're in set in the OG verse. So I was gonna do some audio dramas,
Oh
like
wow.
yeah, and had one that I was working on called the Ripoffs, and
Okay.
which was a comedy, audio comedy, and so the Ripoffs were basically a group of cosplayers, um, of a group of six cosplayers who by chance accident or stop a robbery um, on accident, and then they decide, hey, we could be heroes, um, and so they come up with their own personas of heroes and
Okay.
fake powers, but one ends up getting powers, and so they become like a superhero group, um and acts in their crimes. They do stop like little small crimes at first, but they're like accidentally stopping them, like they try and they're this, like the person they're chasing slips on a banana peel or something and falls down and it ends up getting arrested. They're just lucking out, and
Right.
but unfortunately then they make an enemy of on accident of the town's greatest supervillain. So then they have to fight the greatest supervillain in town. So that's the rip-offs. I wrote 6 episodes as an audio drama, but I think that we're gonna change that to a comic.
Okay.
So instead of doing the audio drama, so I don't know. Just have to find an artist to do that. But
Right.
that's more of a comedy. But I want those people to still they're still in the OG universe, and in that audio drama there's like a radio show they listen to, because it was kind of mixed in with the radio would come on sometimes, and then you'd hear these two characters, the comedy radio disc jockeys, and they mention a lot in the news of other towns in the OG verse, and so they mention like in Metron that college baseball player that got killed.
Right.
They drop the name of the in the first episode, the robber that they accidentally stop came from the same town that Anubis is in, and so he mentions Anubis. So I mean, it's just like those little tidbits in places. So that's really what I'm wanting to do. Oh man, I just now realized that the other day, one of the covers that we have, one of the variant covers for issue 2, now that I mentioned this, one of the guys who did the variant covers, he put out a comic in the 90s in like 92, 94. So like before the
Hmm.
internet and stuff like that. He wants me a 12 issue graphic novel. He wants to re-release it. It's a superhero one as well. And he
Okay.
wants to re-release it through us, and then he wants to do a new version of that same character but like a multiverse version, and put it in the
Okay.
OG verse.
All
So
right.
that's another character.
How do you organize your ideas like that?
Well, basically, I just write it all down and type it out, and then
Hmm.
print it out, and then I have like a file folder that I keep all the information in, and I just as I build stuff, I just kind of like draw it out and pass and stuff like that. Some visual, some I like if it's just a bunch of words, I type those out of how I want to go, and I just basically I'm just become friends with everybody and just kind of be like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. This is kind of what we're building to, and just keep everybody in track through text messaging, through Facebook, Zooms, meeting up with people. We have regular monthly meetings, discussing everything. Um, I mean, it's just basically just keeping it up all on my own. I mean, it's
Right.
kind of like, I kind of see it as, a second job in a way. And I mean, it's a lot to keep up with. Once we start really get rolling by the end of this year, it's going to be right now, it's kind of small, but by the end of this year, I mean, we'll have several books out and several characters
Right.
that I'm keeping up
Wow.
with. And so, uh, yeah, so it's kind of as my Vengeance mythology, and then the Nubis one that I'm started last year, still working on. I keep up all that, like all the details on that.
Hmm.
But as far
Right.
as the characters of the other people's characters, like where Paladin's going, I don't know where it's going. I don't
Right.
know. He's writing that as a 12 issue. All I know is after it's gonna where I can take it, and I'm just keeping up with like the basics of who is this, what their powers are, what cities, or not Paladin's case, but what planets get
Right.
mentioned, just stuff like that. I need all the basic information
Hmm.
um, to to go with. So it
All
it's
right.
a chore, and I didn't really realize that when I first started doing it. But at the same time, though, it's really tons of fun because it's basically, I mean, you grow up reading comic books, right? And you read them yourself, and you read these universes you fall in love with, like DC. Like I'm a huge DC fan, and
Right.
just knowing all those characters' histories and all these different characters and all their cities and stuff like that. And you keep up with all that. You know all that. You know the whole Bat family, right? The
Hmm.
Bruce and Tim and Dick and Jason and all their what's happened with them and where they're going, and that's just the Bat family. And you can keep up with all that. And so it's really just building it up that of your own in your head,
Hmm.
and keeping up with the information to make sure
Right.
everybody's on the same track. And
Right.
we have like our own Google Drive folder where everybody's concepts and stuff go in, so it's all easily accessed. Not only do I
Oh,
have
cool.
Yeah, so not only do I have like the paper copies and stuff like that, but then all that stuff gets put into the Google Drive where everybody has access to. They can put in character designs, they can put in plots, they can put all that information in. So I
Right.
literally, and I have all that, and I have that drive on my phone as well, so I can access that at any time, no matter where I'm at.
Right. So this is exciting. So you this is exciting stuff because as you mentioned, this is the ball's rolling.
Hmm.
You're already got issue 2 is in the printers, and you have a plethora of titles and issues that are going to be coming out in the very near future as well. Are all of them going to be through Kickstarter first?
Um, I'm yes and no.
Okay.
Mostly all of them that so far are in Kickstarter, except for one. Because we're going to do one that is, and it's going to be like 8 pagers or 12 pagers,
Okay.
12 pages, and those we're doing those a little bit different. Um, and the character's really crazy. That and that is going to be it's so hilarious. And but so that one we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to put the first 6 pages um, online where you can read through web comics. I think that's the
Okay.
goal. So like web comics, it's like a big deal, digital comics. So we're gonna put the first 6 pages on there, and I think we've talked about of making a Patreon to where you would subscribe to get where you would be able to read all the story every time we put those out. Those ones, since they're short, 8 to 12 pages, we're trying to do something different with them.
Right. So, if people want to learn more about Original Geek Comics, where can they go?
So we have a Facebook page,
Okay.
facebook.com/Original Geek Comics. We're on Instagram at Original Geek Comics as well. And then we have the website, originalgeekcomics.com, and that's more of our storefront.
Right.
But we do have a newsletter on there as well, that you can sign up at the bottom. We had a Substack newsletter, and I'm trying to get that transitioned over to the website, through the website,
Mm,
because you can sign up there, like at the bottom of the website there. You can put in your email, and where we can send out an email through our Square site there. So
okay. All
so
right.
that's a good thing to do. So if you wanted to keep up with information, the best thing to do would be sign up for that newsletter, because when I do the newsletters, I like to put out that information like a week or so before I tell anyone else. So
Mm,
just to make it feel special.
cool. All right. That's pretty cool. All right. Excellent. Listen, Nick, when you get your other issues coming out, you're going to have to come back on the show and we can
Yeah.
talk more about Paladin and Anubis. That sounds fun.
So that I believe that issue, by the way, will be done at the end of May. So the 1st of June, Paladin #1 should be coming out. So
Perfect. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Nick. It was great chatting with you.
thanks, man. I really appreciate. It's been fun. I love talking the universe and stuff. So I'm really glad that we got to dive into that. So
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So it's kind of like it's be a kind of, oh darn it, I gotta unplug that. Sorry. I'll edit this part out. You know what it is. Yeah, so you got 5 kids. We have to put a dinger on there to know if our 2-year-old ends up getting, coming down, that we have like this door that
yeah.
we need to make sure is
No, I totally understand. I have one of those too, so I knew what that was. So I knew what that was.
you know
I
what
was
that
like,
was.
oh,
Yep, go ahead.
somebody is somewhere or opening there's something that they should not.
Exactly. I usually keep that unplugged, but oh well. All right, now we're good. We're back again. Uh,
Okay.
so so